be telling a Scot-Irish folktale called Old One-Eye. Get comfortable and enjoy. One time, there was an old woman, and she lived way up in the hills in a log cabin all by herself. Now, she'd been saving her money and saving her money, so she was just about rich. She kept her money in a little leather pouch hid way up in the chimney corner. And every night, that old lady would sit there, and she would rock back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and she would card her wool. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. Now, over by the wall, by the chimney, there was a big dry fish just hanging there by its tail, with one eye staring out into the room. She called it Old One Eye because he only had one eye, and he was kind of old. She caught him last year. She walked up to that old one-eyed fish every night and got her butcher knife and cut a chunk out of him and chewed it up really good and went to bed. 3 robbers had came into the area and they heard about her gold. So one night they went up there fixing to rob her. The chief of the robbers had only one eye. On account, the other one got put on a fight, so he called him Old One Eye. That Old One Eye took his men up to the hollow behind that old woman's house and hid them there. You, he called the first robber, you go up there and spy on that old woman, and when she goes to bed, you come back down here and get us, and we'll go up there and steal her gold. So the first robber snuck up to the cabin and found a hole between the logs, and he looked in. And of course, there was that old lady sitting there, just rocking in a carton. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. Before you know it, well, that's 2. That's 1. 2 more coming. I'll get my butcher knife. Laws, that robber jumped up and ran back down to the holler. That lady's a witch. She saw right through the wall and said, that's 1, 2 more coming. I'll get my butcher knife. So such nonsense, said Old One Eye. You were just scared. That old lady can't see through a solid wall. I don't even know if she can see in front of her. You, he called the second robber, you go up there and spy on that old woman. And when she goes to bed, you come back down here and get us. And we'll go up there and steal her gold. So the second robber snuck up to the cabin, and he looked in that hole. And of course, there was that old lady just sitting there, rocking in a carton. Skits, scratch, scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. The first thing you know, well, that's 2. 1 more coming. I'll get my butcher knife. Jimmy, that robber jumped up and ran back down to the holler. That lady is a witch. She's a witch. Let's get out of here, men. You 2 are just playing chicken, said Old One Eye. I guess I'll just have to go out there myself and spy on that old woman, and when she goes to bed, I'll steal her gold and get all the money to myself. So Old One Eye himself snuck up to the cabin, and he looked in the hole with his one good eye. And of course, there was that old lady, just sitting there, rocking in a carton. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. Goodness gracious me! Well, that's 3. I better get my butcher knife and cut a chunk out of you, Old One Eye. That robber's face just lit up. He jumped up and ran back down as fast as he can to the holler. That lady is a witch. You 2 were right. Come on, man, we need to get out of here. So, Old One Eye and his man were out of there, and they never came back into that area. But all that old woman did was go over and get out her butcher knife and cut a chunk out of Old One Eye, chew him up, and go to bed. And she slept sound all night long.
Hello everybody, my name is Cole and I'll be telling a folktale from Holland called The Boy Who Held Back the Sea. So once a long time ago, there was this boy named Jean. He couldn't call him a good boy or a bad boy either. So one day, he was in church with his mother. He asked if he could be excused. go read to old Mr. Schuyler, a blind man who lived 5 miles down the canal. His mother blessed his son's loving heart and sent him off with a lunch and Mr. Schuyler's favorite rhubarb pie. So once he was out of his mother's sight, he didn't go right to Mr. Schuyler. He went to go sat by the king's statue and ate that pie up himself. And he couldn't finish it all, so he grabbed out a slingshot and shot some up on top of the king's statue for the pigeons to eat. So after that, he went into the forest to go hunt and find a squirrel. So once he found a squirrel, he killed it and built a fire to eat it. It was starting to get darker by now, and he was getting tired. So he went to his favorite spot by the sea walls and sat there. He was surprised to feel a little trickle of water running down his back. He looked over his shoulder and saw there was a little hole with water coming out of it. The sea, the mighty sea, was leaking through a small hole. So even a naughty boy like Jean knew a small hole and Chuck would get bigger and bigger. So he went to town and he tried to find a guard. Once he found a guard, he said that there was a hole in the sea wall. The guard said, "Naughty boys like you don't end in good endings." "I'm telling the truth," Jean yelled. "I'll send help with you. Just go back there." So once he got back there, there was no help following him at all. So he packed some dirt in there. A few seconds later, sputtered out. So he put his handkerchief in there. That sputtered out too. So he wrapped that handkerchief around his finger and stuck his finger right in that hole. So once his finger was in there, it was getting darker by the minute, and storm clouds were coming in. A few minutes later, he could hear waves crashing against the seawall, and he could smell the damp sea salt air. He was in an awkward position too. So after a while, guards started to look for him. One found him and went back in town to go tell the other guards. One had an idea of getting his mother and father. So once they got his mother and father and some other guards, they went back there. The mother and father wrapped him in a blanket and took him home, while the guards tackled that situation themselves. So a few days passed on, and Jean was feeling better, and he was up and going. And they held a huge celebration for the young hero. But Jean didn't go to that. Oh no, he went to go read to old Mr. Schuyler. The end.
Hello, my name is Allie Baylor, and today I'll be telling a folktale from Great Britain, England. This folktale is called The Farmer's Fun-Loving Daughter. I hope you enjoy! There once was a farmer, an old man, who lived in an enormous house with 89 rooms. He had 2 sons and a daughter. The sons were intelligent, hard-working chaps who knew how to run the estate. The daughter, however, was a fun-loving party-goer. No one knew what she did, and she did not know how to run a farm. The father knew that he had to decide what he was going to do with his enormous house and his land. So he created a will, and in his will it said that he would give each one of his children £1. In those days, a pound was $15. It was a lot then, but now it's not. With those $15, they had to fill every one of the 89 rooms with something, from ceiling to floor. If they can accomplish this, they will inherit the land. Since the farmer knew that his will was done, he took to his bed and he died. The following day, the 3 children and the lawyer went to the churchyard and laid their father's coffin in the ground. Then they went back to the house to eat cold ham sandwiches. Now this is what you do at most English funerals: a walk at the gravesite and ham sandwiches. Now it was time for the reading of the will. The lawyer said, "Your father has willed you this. £1. The children all groaned, "Ugh." And with this pound, you have to fill every one of the 89 rooms with something, from ceiling to floor. If you can accomplish this, you will inherit the land. The oldest son tacked up his horse and his cart and rode around the countryside. every feather-made mattress he can find. He went back to the house and slit open every one of the mattresses with his knife. He took all the feathers and put them in every one of the 89 rooms. What a mess! He told the lawyer he had done it, but the lawyer insisted he checked every one of the 89 rooms again. He did, but the time him and the lawyer checked all the rooms again, there was a gap between the ceiling and the top of the feathers, so he had failed. The second son set out with his pound and returned sometime later with a small cardboard box. In the box there were a bunch of candles. He put a candle in every one of the rooms and lit them. He told the lawyer he had done it, so he and the lawyer checked all the rooms. It took so long that the candle in the last room had burned out, so that room was in darkness. So he had failed too. That left the daughter. She set out with her pound, and she bought a small little penny whistle. She opened all the doors in the house. She sat crisscross-legged in the hallway and started to play a lively tune. The mourners were still on top of the house, and when they heard her music, some began to smile, some began to tap their feet, and some began to dance. At the end of the tune, the lawyer said, "Very good, but what so?" The daughter said, "First of all, I filled every one of these 89 rooms with music. Second of all, I filled every one of the 89 rooms with joy. And if you put music and joy together, you get life. And even though at the time of my father's death, I put life in every one of these 89 rooms." Everyone thought she was so clever, they let her inherit the land. The end. I hope you enjoyed.